It worked. Whatever button he pushed, it was okay. John Anderson, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, sounds good. Yep. We just got one other glitch here and I think we'll be ready to go. John Cloutier, are you just in there for fun?
I am. I thought I'd look at something.
Okay.
Unfortunately, no one from IT is here. I don't know why.
Well, to be honest with you, Tom, I mean, it's not the end of the world. I mean, there's nobody in the public right now. So yeah, if Ken just joined by Zoom and keeps himself on mute, it's not a big deal. I just don't know if this is working to the people at home. Hey, Don or John, can you have somebody log on to YouTube to see if they're watching us right now? Oh, I have somebody that might be able to help us here. Hey, Claire, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, we can hear you. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Are you here for the first part of our workshop, Claire?
I thought I would watch the whole thing. I think that I'm supposed to be there for 7 p.m., but I'm not.
Oh, okay. No, I'm sorry. You just wrote hand was raised in the attendance. That's
I wanted to let you know that someone else could hear you.
yeah, oh, we know. We're used to this sort of back and forth in the beginning of our meetings. So thank you.
There was nobody on YouTube that I could see yet.
Yeah, and then our microphone's just our mic's just dying.
Hi, Paula. This is Betsy. I'm going to have limited video tonight. Just FYI.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Just Betsy, we're running a little bit behind schedule because we're just trying to get the.
What do you suggest we do here?
Well, he reset the system, so I think it's rebooting. So I think if ever. And John, did you say there's nothing showing on YouTube?
It was showing, but there was nobody watching yet.
Oh, that's fine. Okay, but we're at least broadcasting on YouTube.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna hit Zoom call.
Yep, I think hit Zoom call and see what happens. Testing. Okay. Don, can you say something real quick?
Yep. The motions to suspend will go at anything else changed to the agenda. Is that right? At the outset? Did you hear that?
I did. I don't know if they did.
Oh, I think hold on. I think we are almost operational. All right, we're good. Everything, Councilor Johnson, you want to turn your computer down? Or you could I mean, everything's good now, so you don't have to be on Zoom anymore, so. Okay, thanks everybody for your patience. I apologize. Just had to work through some technical, excuse me? Yeah, Nick Cloutier is here, yeah. Okay, I will save, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. This is the December 2nd, 2020 Scarborough Town Council workshop. We will have a workshop first at 6 o'clock and then we will have our regular meeting at 7. I will skip the presence, the roll call. We will do that at our regular meeting. The purpose of the workshop is twofold. We have a pretty specific agenda tonight. If you see on your screen, for the first 15 minutes, we are expecting a brief update from the Maine Water. I believe they're here to discuss a rate increase. And then after those 15 minutes, we're going to have 45 minutes of our town assessor, Nick Cloutier, is going to give us a presentation about his thoughts on the current in-house revaluation plan. So with that, Rick Knowlton, I'm going to bring you in. Rick, do you want your camera on while you speak?
Yeah, and in fact, Paul, I'd like to share my screen if that's possible. I have a couple of slides to help with the presentation.
Yep, absolutely. So just give me 1 second here. I'm going to have to put you back in the audience and then.
But it doesn't have the Zoom
Oh.
or whatever's being shared.
Okay, thank you, Rick. And then let me just allow, do you see the share screen option on your bottom, or is it not there?
I have it. Yes, thanks.
Is it there?
It is.
Okay, perfect. So I believe you are ready to go when you're ready. We're ready to go when you're ready.
Great. Let me jump right into it. So thanks for letting me join you tonight. I hope you can see my screen. And what I have to talk about tonight is an exciting project for us, but it's a major undertaking that will impact water rates for Maine water customers in Scarborough and for the town of Scarborough and your public fire protection charges in our service territory, which for those of you that may not be quite familiar, Maine Water Company from our Biddeford-Saco division serves the Pine Point area of Scarborough. So from the marsh to the beach. We have about 1,000 connections. So it's a population that varies obviously with the summer, but it's a couple of thousand people, residents of Scarborough that are on our system. And the Biddeford-Saco water system operates off this treatment facility on the Saco River, which is off South Street. It was originally constructed in 1884 when Grover Cleveland was elected president of the United States, the 22nd president. He beat a guy by the name of James Blaine from Maine for the presidency. So that's where the Blaine House came from. It goes back that far. The last time this facility was renovated in a significant way was in 1936. And so it's an aged facility that is truly at the end of its useful life. As you can see in the lower right, we've had several flooding events from the Saco River. The facility sits squarely in the 100-year floodplain. And our experience is that, or expectation is, I guess I should say, is that with climate change and other factors, those events are going to become more frequent, not less. There's an obvious pride in the Biddeford-Saco area of the use of the Saco River. It's an amazing source of fresh water. It's got a capacity that is more than 10 times larger than Sebago Lake in terms of quantity of water. But it's a different source of water than Sebago is, which is the Portland Water District's source of water. We completed a comprehensive engineering assessment of this facility back in 2014, just after Maine Water acquired what was the Biddeford-Saco Water Company. And after full evaluation of the needs of the facility, the recommendation from our consulting engineers was to replace the facility and not try to renovate it, because no matter how you looked at it, you couldn't engineer your way out of the floodplain. So we've been sharing this facility and how it looks and what it is as it is with the community leaders around the 4 service communities. Special thanks here in Scarborough to Angela Blanchett and Mike Thurlow. They've been participating on our advisory committee for several years now and been kept up to speed. But we have moved forward with a plan for a new treatment facility. And here's a picture of it. It's across the street on South Street. It's got the same capacity to treat water, which is about 12 million gallons of water a day. It uses the Saco River as the existing facility does. And we've been working on this plan for a few years now. We started construction pre-COVID in January of this year. We paused for a while to make sure that we could comply with not only the CDC guidelines, but with our desire to have efficient and effective construction program, not knowing what the pandemic would bring. But we've had great success to date. The project is on schedule. It's on our budget. I'll give you an update of that progress in just a second. But the new facility will be more efficient. It'll use less labor, less chemical, less electricity to produce a gallon of water than what we do in the current facility. It's going to be more friendly to the environment. We have some discharge to the Saco River that's permitted by the DEP, and will improve the quality of that discharge and reduce the volume. And we're preserving about 250 acres of land around the facility for public access and community use. And we're working with the city of Biddeford on that. The direct construction costs are about $4 per gallon. So the total price of this facility is a little over $50 million. Construction's about half done, and it's projected to be finished in the spring of 2022. So we've had a project site camera set up. This is a 14-second time lapse from July until last week. And I just want to run this to you so you can see where we started and where we are now as we've gone through the last several months of construction. You can go to our website and see this anytime, real life, real time, what's going on. You can monitor the progress. But here's a shot of the facility under construction as of last week. It's about 50,000 square feet of process facility. So it's a sizable undertaking. And what that all turns into is an impact on user rates. And in our process, which is very different from the municipal process, we go to the Public Utilities Commission as a fully regulated utility in the state of Maine. And we make application to change our rates. The last time base rates were set in the Biddeford Saco service area was 2017. And currently revenues in the division are about $8 million a year from all sources. This generational investment in this new facility is going to require additional revenue of almost $6 million a year. And traditionally, we would finish the facility, put it into service, make it in regulatory terms used and useful. And upon the service to the customers of this new asset, we would turn to the Public Utilities Commission for recovery of our investment. But we want to take a different approach, and that's really the focus of my asking for some time with you tonight, is that this is a substantial change in revenues and change in water rates. In a traditional rate filing of one step, it would be almost an 80% rate increase. And to do that in one time, one step can generate concerns for rate shock and certainly bring about a negative impression of this wonderful new piece of critical infrastructure because it's very expensive. So our approach, and what I wanted to share with you tonight primarily, is that we've developed a non-traditional way of bringing an application to the Public Utilities Commission, and that is filing now before the facility is complete and asking for an adjustment in revenues over each of the next 3 years to build a ramp to the new level of revenues that we require ultimately, instead of hitting a rate wall, if you would. So looking at that, just a little history, here's where water bills in the Biddeford Saco area have been for the last decade or so. When we acquired the system in 2012, residential customers in this service territory paid literally about $10 a month, $32.93 for a quarter for 100 gallons of water a day. We had a rate increase in 2014 that brought that to $40 a quarter, and we had the rate increase in 2017, which now makes that about $20 a month, or about $60 a quarter. When we're complete with this facility, the average residential bill is going to reach just over $100 a quarter, which, if you look at the two bars, compares pretty favorably with the average water bill in the state of Maine. It's about a penny a gallon, a little over $1 a day for 100 gallons of water delivered to your house. But if you look at it in terms of history of the last 10 years, we fully expect customers of ours to be concerned about that ramp of increase over time. So what we've done is create what we've called a revenue smoothing mechanism for the next couple of years. And I'll explain this chart to you if I can. The black line would show you a traditional rate filing in a single step. We would chug along at just over $8 million a year in annual revenue. And then in 2022, when the facility's complete, we would request a one-time increase from $8 million a year in revenue to over $14 million a year in revenue, and adjust rates accordingly to achieve that. What our proposal will be to the commission is to start in 2021 with a third of that increase and do it again in 2022, and ultimately a third and final step in 2023. And the mechanism that we can use to accomplish this, actually by pre-funding the construction program and pre-funding the project before completion, we can actually reduce the overall cost of the project, because we are offsetting at the time of completion capital that would normally be rolled into rate base. And when you run through the math, we can take about $600,000 a year in annual revenue off the table if we use this mechanism. So the mechanism provides a couple of benefits. First, it builds a ramp to the new levels of revenue, and then it ultimately reduces the overall level of revenue. So that's what that aqua blue line is in the presentation. So in summary, we would propose to the Public Utilities Commission a multi-year approach to this significant impact on our service territory and on our customers served by this new facility. An approach that would avoid a large single-step rate increase, an approach that would reduce the overall impact on water rates by pre-funding the project. And we would also be able to set a predictable schedule for those rate adjustments so that municipal budgets and all of our customers could make appropriate plans, knowing that those things are coming and they're not going to be unknown or a surprise at the end of the day. So that's the sum total of my presentation. I can go back to that, but I'm happy to ask questions. What I really would like to do at some point in time when it's appropriate is ask if the town would be willing to participate in the procedure with the Maine Public Utilities Commission. There's a couple of ways to do that. One is simply filing a letter and comments with the commission that might suggest that a multi-year approach to this would in fact provide benefit not only to the town, but to the customers that we serve in the town of Scarborough. And then the other way, of course, to participate is by becoming an intervener in the proceeding and have legal status as a party to the case, and be privy to all of the decisions and all of the discovery and all of the details that come with that. So that's a long presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have and to go into any level of detail that I didn't cover that you'd like to know about.
Thank you, Rick. Councilor Calucci, do you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question. I just wonder if you could explain, you said you're going to need an additional 6 million in revenue when the new facility comes online. Can you talk me through what makes up that 6 million?
Sure. Rate structures are set basically to ensure that the utility has revenue sufficient to ensure that it can do its obligations to the community. That is our mission, to serve the community. So the rates and revenues are set to make sure that we get recovery of our actual costs of service, the labor, the chemicals, the power, the trucks, you name it. The direct costs are recovered dollar for dollar on operating and maintenance expenses. And then the second piece is the recognition of our capital investment. And that comes in a couple of ways. There is a depreciation expense. There are property taxes to be paid because we are a private utility. We pay property taxes to the town of Scarborough, for example. There is the recognition that our funds and our investments have financing costs associated with them, just like the town's investments do. So our cost of borrowing, our balance sheet is funded with roughly 50% debt and 50% equity. The debt costs are clear. They're generally long-term debt obligations, although we have a short-term line of credit. And we recover dollar for dollar for what those debt costs are. And then we have the equity piece where shareholders have funded these investments and the commission establishes a allowed return on that equity, which currently in the last time they did this is 9.5%. So it's more expensive money than the debt side is. But the debt and the equity combined create a weighted average cost of capital, and our rates are set to ensure that cost of capital is met on top of the cost to operate the utility. And then we have income taxes to pay at the end of the day. So all of those things go into a revenue requirement, and then that revenue requirement is divided out by the number of customers and the volume of water, and we create individual water rates that are designed to generate that level of revenue, inclusive of the public fire protection charges, all in accordance with the Maine Public Utility Commission's rules for cost of service and the methodologies necessary to make the math work.
Okay. So you have a $50 million facility that's going in. And
Right.
that's the only new thing, right? All these other costs are things that you had with the old facility as well, right?
Right. Along the way, there are the normal changes in our budgets, just like the municipal budget. And we work very hard to control those things. But those costs will be captured in this 3-year period as well. They're minor relative to the cost of the facility and the capital support costs of the facility in both that cost of capital and depreciation, real estate costs. It's really reflective of this new level of investment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Hamel?
Rick, I wanted to ask you a question. Thanks very much for the presentation, by the way, and the new facility looks terrific. You mentioned you're a private utility, so can you tell us a little bit about your ownership structure? You talked to us a little bit about your debt and equity. What is your ownership structure?
Sure. Maine Water Company is a subsidiary of Connecticut Water Service Company, which in turn is a subsidiary of San Jose Water Group. The San Jose Water Group is traded on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol SJWG. And they are the ultimate parent company. So SJWG does water utility business in 4 states: California, Texas, Connecticut, and Maine. And Maine is not the smallest. Texas is the smallest operation. Maine is the next smallest. But Maine Water Company, in one form or another, under private ownership, has been around and providing service since 1930. So we're on year 90, providing service to customers in Maine. We serve 21 different municipalities across the state. The Biddeford-Saco division is the largest single water system. It's actually the second largest water system in the state, behind the Portland Water District. So Scarborough has the unique opportunity to be served by the 2 largest water systems in Maine. But our structure in Maine as a investor-owned utility, much like CMP, is unusual. Most water systems in Maine are public entities, either quasi-municipal districts or departments of the municipality.
So just a quick follow-up. How long have we been part of Connecticut and then ultimately San Jose Water District? I mean, is that, you indicated that it's been a long-standing thing, is that right? Or has it been a recent transaction?
It's recent in that the Biddeford-Saco Water Company, which served Pine Point up until 2012, was a local investor-owned utility that essentially ran out of capital. And in 2012, it was acquired by Connecticut Water Service and merged into Maine Water Company. So the current structure has been in place since 2012. SJW Group is a new addition in 2019. So in 2019, the Connecticut Water Service Company was acquired and merged into SJW Group. So the California connection is relatively new. It's only a year old.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Any others? Counselor Anderson? You're on mute, Counselor Anderson.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. Just a couple questions. So the first one, in your ramp up model, you had it at 2 years going up and then slightly declining. Was that the optimal model that got to that 600,000 in savings, or were there other models considered, like doing it maybe over a 4 or 5 year period for the ramp up?
Great question. And yes, we actually looked at 4 different options. And our goals were to both build the ramp and to ultimately lower the overall revenue requirement. So the other options, one of which was a 5-year program instead of 3, couldn't achieve the second goal, which is an overall lower resulting revenue requirement when we were completed. We'd end up with actually a higher revenue requirement because the servicing the capital, which has, remember, mostly been spent, has a cost to it during that period. So that adds costs to the ultimate revenue requirements. And while we could build a shallower, longer ramp, you ended up at a higher revenue requirement at the end. So we didn't think that was preferable, but it's certainly an option. We also looked at an option to try and cover just the financing costs of the project and have a smaller ramp built up front. And that didn't get us to the same place either. And then we looked at a model where we would not start the ramp until after the facility was finished and in service, and then ramp from there. And we ended up with the same problem, that you would end up with a larger need for revenue at the end of that ramp than this option, which suggests if you do get started early, before construction is completed, you can you can apply those funds to offset a portion of this capital cost and end up in a better place. If you wait till later, then you lose that opportunity.
Okay, thanks. And can you help me understand why the tail end, why it goes down so slowly relative to the ramp up? And at what point do we see a deeper decline? Because my assumption, kind of based on what Councilor Clutie was saying, was that $50 million for that new investment was really kind of driving up those costs. So would we anticipate further out beyond 2030 a steeper decline in the rate?
Yeah, well, our goal, like the town's goal, would be when you have long-lived assets, is to take out long-term financing. So this funding literally is 30-year money, and we're trying to manage the annual cost of that for a long period of time. And the way that our costs are recovered, in our rate structures, we're not allowed to recover the principal of those loan payments. We only recover in our annual revenue the interest on that debt. So unlike the town, when you are retiring debt and building equity in your assets, that equity is there for us because it's got an equity investment component on the front end, not built over time. And the debt side of it, we get recovery of interest only. So at the end of 30 years, when we are done with this initial period of long-term debt that funded the facility, we are generally in a position where we need to refinance that same debt. And so that period of, well, at the end of 30 years, the rates will go back down because we paid off that note, doesn't really happen for us. And it's part of our regulatory framework. The other reality too is that decline shown on the graph doesn't reflect the rest of the world happening along the way, doesn't reflect the other changes that may happen in the utility. That's showing you the impact of, basically depreciating the facility under the commission's rules and all other things being equal, which we generally know isn't the case, that there will be drivers for rates to not go down, but to stay where they are. Because this system that we did buy in 2012 has a long list of capital needs. I mentioned the engineering study in my presentation. It's actually a 2-volume set. They couldn't get everything into one book. So it's a long list of recognition that while the prior owners were very proud of their low water rates, they had the lowest water rates in the state, they sacrificed and had an inability to do capital investment for an extended period of time. And that's coming back to fight us now. And today the Maine Maine ASCE, the Association of Civil Engineers, released their infrastructure scorecard on the state of Maine. And this is another example where when we want to talk about resiliency, when we want to talk about reliability, when we want to talk about critical infrastructure, there are 40,000 people being served by this one water treatment facility every day. And it's not a facility that we believe we could run to failure and then fix it or then replace it. It really requires some very serious planning and some very serious investment before we get into further challenges in maintaining the facility that we have.
Great,
Councilor-
thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Gleisten, I see your hands up.
So this looks like, a great plan. I'm just wondering, have you seen delays in construction before, or what might be potential barriers for coming online? when you think that you might, and so that, customers might have a longer rate height, longer than anticipated because of construction issues?
Great question. I'm very confident that our construction program is over the hump, if you would. We're about 50% complete, but in that first half of the construction project, we have completed all the critical connections to our existing system, and we've completed all of the work within the Saco River, the sensitive work that has the environmental impacts and the potentials for flooding and other events. So we're up out of the ground, and the completion of the project from this point forward has the normal construction risks of labor availability and equipment deliveries and materials availability, but it doesn't carry the more significant risks of weather. You'll remember at this point, we've essentially got a roof on most of the facility. It doesn't carry the risks of the site work development end of things, where the road is built, it's paved, we have access, we have power, we're well on the way of finishing the facility. But when we do get inside, there's a lot of details. This is a fully automated facility that's computer controlled. It's highly technical in the equipment and the operation of the process. So there's a whole nother year of construction to complete, but it's not the heavy work, it's the detailed work. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, great, thanks.
Well, the chair has stepped away, so I'm going to ask a question as Councilor Ken Johnson. A great presentation. I learned something today. Did not know the town of Scarborough was serviced by 2 water districts. I was just curious, are you doing any kind of marketing campaign to give your customers a heads up that they're looking at about an 80% water increase in their bill?
We are indeed, and that is our burden. That's our objective. First, I have 3 more meetings like this: one with the town of Old Orchard Beach, one with the city of Biddeford, and one with the city of Saco. But you're the first, and thanks again for the invitation. But the outreach to customers. We've started primarily in the Biddeford-Saco region. We've met with the Chamber of Commerce, which we're members, and we've done some community leadership outreach to ensure that there's no one on the planning side of this kind of work that's surprised. And in terms of our customers, we've really just started. We have a host of videos available on our website. We did a virtual groundbreaking. With every bill that we send out, we have references in this service territory to the website and to the information on the website about the facility. And with our filing complete and in place, and that process started with the Public Utilities Commission, we'll ramp up the details of the dollars and cents. We've talked mostly now about the need and not about the impacts, and it's time for us to talk more about the impact and keep that communication going.
Right. One last question, if you don't mind. Is there any concern that the PUC will not see your way on a three-tier increase?
Yeah, there absolutely is that risk, and that's why I brought up the thought that perhaps the town of Scarborough might be able to help lend some support for the approach. Historically, the commission's rules have prevented them from recognizing investments in infrastructure before they're complete and providing service. There's a term called used and useful, and we don't meet the used and useful test until this facility is complete and producing water. So asking to collect revenue from customers in advance of that is unusual.
Okay.
So the mechanism is technically a reserve account, much like the community uses when you, like we just voted for the new fire truck. We're gonna take dollars in, we're gonna fund this account for the future purchase of the new fire apparatus. This works much that same way, where we would accept revenue today, dedicate it, isolate it in a fund that upon completion of the facility would then reduce the construction cost of that facility in terms of what goes on to the books. And it's that net difference that ends up being supported forever in the future rates. So that's an unusual request to the Public Utilities Commission. We believe, and our lawyers believe, that they have the authority to do that. They've certainly done stepped rates in the past before, but they've never done it, to our knowledge, in advance of an asset being used and useful. So that's really the difference here. And this pre-funding concept is one that we're going to ask them to embrace and put some guardrails around it so that it's clear how we progress through the next 3 years to the completion and the ultimate operation of the facility.
Councilor Hamel?
A quick question. So on this, the rate increase, though, the way you're trying to do the blending there, is this something that's been used elsewhere, or is this purely innovative? Is it novel?
No, it's not novel. There are jurisdictions across the country where mechanisms like this are in place. It's just never been done in Maine in water. It has been applied in a different way in Maine for gas utilities. And the electric utilities generally operate on alternative rate plans and have been for several years now, where they're looking forward and have performance objectives and other criteria that's non-traditional rate making, if you would. But it simply hasn't been applied in the water utility space because, like I said, this is a very unusual project. For us to go replace a couple of miles of pipe every year is the norm. But for us to build a new water treatment facility and invest $50 million in the system is generational.
Thank you. Any others? Rick, you said we're the first town, we're the first one on the stop, right? So Scarborough's your first presentation, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I think next, I don't know exactly what our support looks like, so perhaps finish the tour of the neighboring towns and circle back with me with a follow-up email, and we'll take it from there. Does that sound like a reasonable next step?
It does, and thank you for allowing me to go well over my time. I appreciate it.
Not a problem, sir. Thank you for the information. Very helpful. And Rick, once I promote you to panelist, like my only option is to kick you out, so please don't take it personally.
I don't.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Oh, actually I can. Okay, that works. So currently we do not have enough time for Mr. Cloutier. So my suggestion would be item number 9 on our agenda is non-action items. My suggestion would be that Mr. Hamel or somebody else can make a motion at the top of the actual meeting to move non-action items right behind the town manager's report. And we can essentially have Nick Cloutier's workshop right after the town manager's report. So that would be my suggestion. I think another alternative would be to bump it to a different day altogether. But I know Nick is here ready to give his presentation and our agenda is very light. So my recommendation is we move item number 9 on the regular agenda, non-action items. We move it to right after the town manager's report, and our non-action item is a presentation from the town assessor. Mr. Hamel?
Yes, just a procedural question. With that, if I understand this correctly, will still require a move approval to suspend the rules and revise the agenda, or is that not necessary?
I'll run in the next 16 minutes, I'll run it by Tody. So, yeah, so I'll have Tody cook something up and I'll have Counselor Clucci do it, Dawn, so you're off the hook, so. Right. So I'm gonna assume, is that a okay solution for everybody? Is that a fair solution? Okay, so with that, we're gonna take, we'll see each other back in 16 minutes when we start the regular town council meeting, which just got extended a little bit, to have Nick Cloutier give his presentation and we can do some Q&A with him. Sound good?
The other option is
Thank
to
you,
let
Paul.
us start and pick it up and.
No.
Thank
Okay,
you,
we'll
Paul.
see
Good idea. Thank you.
you guys at 7 o'clock. Everybody stay in the meeting and just mute yourself and all that fun stuff.
Thank you. See you on the hour.